Alright, this is a problem we've seen before. It's an iPad mini that has no power, and when I go test for the classic short here on the PP3B3 outline of the PMIC, we can see that these caps are shorted and nothing else is. So that means we've figured it out before that there is an internal short inside the PMIC chip. And for data recovery, we can solve this by just removing this inductor here and injecting the 3.3 volts that the line needs, and just forgetting about the fact that there's a short in the PMIC. But for the sake of the device, we need to actually replace the PMIC. And I did a PMIC replacement video once before in the Mini, and I swore I'd never do it again. But that video was pretty lame. I had to go pick up the kids or something, and it erased some of the clips from the video. So I figured I'd do it again. So the way my strategy here for underfill removal, underfill is a blessing and a curse, mostly a curse. Curse for repair and chip replacement. It's a blessing for actual protection of a device from water and drop damage. This underfill here in the Mini comes up pretty easily with a relatively low heat. So I'm just using an X-Acto knife, and there's really nothing to do here other than be extremely patient and just pluck this stuff off, razor it off. And this is, you know, I really don't like this job. This is, I don't think, really worth it anymore for a Mini Original. But for some reason this customer really wanted it done, so I told her I'd give it a shot. But I definitely would recommend just replacing the Mini if it has this problem. This is not a feasible thing to do for time. It's just got a lot of risk here, you know, pulling pads, dealing with all this underfill. It's extremely tedious on a device that's, you know, market value is, you know, 150, 200 bucks. That's about what the cost of this time and risk would be, in my opinion. So you got to get this underfill off here, or else when the chip comes up, it will just rip with it. It'll take off an entire sort of city block of all these little small components with the chip when it finally comes off. So I'm kind of making a nice border around the entire chip. So that it won't take with it all of these components on the edges. Alright, that's pretty good. I don't know what heat setting I'm on. It's looks like 5.5 on my Hako. And I'm just gonna, you know, I haven't found a real practical reason to do more shielding than just using these sort of universal iPad mini shields for everything with some quarters on top of the important chips. Alright, now it's time to crank up the heat a little bit. And I'm going to put some flux on here, and we're going to try to get this chip off. And this is really the probably most difficult part of this step. I think actually that's not true. Scraping off the underfill that's under the chip, that's definitely the most difficult part. Alright, now I need some kind of a tool that will let me grab the chip when it comes off. these chips that are big and really it's secured with underfill on it, the solder will melt, the underfill will not. And it will be, sometimes you need to kind of get an edge under something and kind of strategize how you're going to lift this chip up with when everything here is sort of loose and floating around and melting. And that's can be a real pain. I should probably change to a bigger nozzle for this, but it's the end of the day and I'm not going to. See if I can get some more height on that. I can see that the solder is starting to melt on the sides. I'm just going to try to rock this chip. I'm having trouble getting it off. Come on. There we go. Alright, so that wasn't too bad. So you can see that I have too much heat along here, but there's not really anything over here that's going to be bothered by that. Certainly not the coil. The coil doesn't give a crap about heat. Alright, so now alright, so now under this chip there's still a ton of underfill. So, you know, I don't really know what's the best strategy to kind of get this, you know, out of here, or how much it's really even necessary. But you gotta make all these balls pretty flat. Now this one, you know, came up, and right now it looks like there's not pulled pads, if you look around here. And that's always the sort of the question. Did I pull up a bunch of pads? So here's one here that's missing, which can make you go, oh shit, it's not going to work. But let's really drill down on that pad and look to see, does it have any kind of trace from the bottom or the sides that are leading to it? And the answer on that one is no. I don't see any little copper in the middle of it or anywhere on the side. So that tells me that that is an NC not connected pad, which means I don't have to worry about it. Alright, so let's see what happens if we put a bunch of flux on here and just get an iron in here. And I'm going to kind of put a lot of leaded solder on my iron. I don't need my shields anymore. Here's my dead chip. So when I put this leaded solder on here, it just kind of helps things to go smoothly later on if I'm going to come through here and braid. I'm kind of tempted to just leave the layer of underfill that's left on here if it's pretty even. And if not, just sort of make it even. And you can see now there appears to be more missing pads than when I started. And that's because, you know, these are also just unused NC pads that had nothing but a solder ball from the original chip sitting on them. Now as I sort of mop up the extra solder that was under the chip, those balls don't have anything to hang on to, so they just sort of come up. This actually looks really good. I got lucky on this one, and a lot of the underfill. Oh, what's that? I think it's just more of those NC pads. Alright, well, let's get some braid on here. Thinner braid with fat tip seems to be the lucky combination. Alright, so let's get rid of that blob. Alright, am I missing any important pads? I really don't think so. None of those matter. I think that I really was intending to do a pad repair video, but I don't think there's anything here to show you for that. This one just got lucky. Now, I do have to deal with some underfill. So, this corner over here, it's probably hard to see in the video, but there's a raised blob of underfill that's sort of stuck over here. So I'm going to set my heat back down to low. And see how it's nice and flat over here, and there's a big shit stain of underfill over here. So this is where I'll be really bummed at full pads at this point. This is kind of like just being a dentist, I guess. You just have to look at it as plaque that you gotta take off. And it's just a giant pain in the ass. There's nothing we can do about it. You can try to just use an iron and just sort of burn it off and kind of almost melt it down with the iron. I think whenever you're doing these jobs, you kind of have to have an attitude that this is probably not going to work. And if it gets to be, you know, more annoying than you can stand, then just use a more brute force method and hope for the best. And if it's not meant to be, then it's just not meant to be. I like jelly. think I would, if I had Louis Rossmann in a torture chamber and I needed to extract national secrets from him, I would just sit there and just make him watch this video. And that would definitely do it. He would sooner cut off his soldering hands than pick underfill like this. Will she pull a pad? Stay tuned. I am certain that absolutely no one would sit here and watch this video. Everybody has fast forwarded just to see what happens. I'd like to fast forward to the end right now. I'd like you to come back and just clue me in if this is going to even work or not. If not, I'd rather just quit now. Let's at least let there be an image up there. Funny, in my head I'm thinking, can you imagine if this was your job? And I'm thinking, wait, this is my job. This job stinks. What did you do today, honey? I excavated underfill from under a power chip of a $150 device. Great. I do think there's clearly too much heat on that bottom side, but I think that it is worth it for the fact that most of the underfill, except for this one side, came off with a chip. Alright, that looks ready for me to clean off with a little alcohol very carefully to try and get rid of the scrapings of that stuff. You can see down here where the underfill was thick that those pads are still pretty big balls. I'll have to come back through there with the iron. pads down. See, now I feel nervous about it because I think it's going to work. Alright, so I don't want to be super aggressive with braid and really, you know, go after making these things like ass smooth. All I care about is that they're pretty much flat. I'm kind of just feeling by touch here, is there any sort of like raised clumps of underfill that I missed, that I need to address, that will prevent the chip from sitting flat? Now, if this was an important iPad that was going to, you know, save the day for somebody, and instead of just a, you know, random run-of-the-mill who cares iPad, then you might want to take the board out. I didn't bother for this repair. If you'd had the board out, you could preheat under the chip, and you could easily put the board in ultrasonic to clear this sort of debris that's kind of around. But, you know, I'm not super concerned about it. I'm gonna just kind of let whatever's there live and kind of get burned up. Alright, before I put the new chip on, I'm gonna just kind of make sure these things don't actually short anything. Touch my two hot spots. Alright, now before we start putting the new chip on, let's make sure that we were right all along and that the shorts are relieved. So let's put the multimeter back. Alright, ground. One side needs to be touching ground. Alright, is anything shorted down here? Okay, no. Alright, good to go. Alright. That could be a high spot. Alright. I think those all look reasonably flat enough that I'm not going to bother with doing anything else. Now I did forget, as many minis as I've looked at, I have no clue right now which way the chip goes, so I better glance at a mini to just double check that, because that would really be a massive, massive disappointment. Giant disaster. Alright, so the Apple logo goes up. Alright, now for the moment of truth. So, here's a question I get asked a lot. Can I reball this chip? No, because the chip had a internal short. It was shorted out. You know, it doesn't look shorted, but something inside the chip itself was the source of the short, so we are definitely not going to be reballing it. We're going to be getting a new one. So here's a new one. You know, even this chip is a $25 chip from China. So this repair is definitely not something I would recommend that anybody do. This chip looks a little beat up on the edge. Somebody else has reballed something, but that is what we have. So we're going to go with it. Alright, so I'm going to put a little bit of flux down. I'm going to heat it up. I want the flux to spread around without there being like too much of it. The chip will find its own way to some degree, but you want to kind of give it the best start you can. Okay, so I'm going to turn the heat back up, put some shields back on, my quarter back on. Have to sacrifice some vision here in order to be able to keep my eyes on this chip. Good color change on the far side. Alright. Alright, shields come off. I'm not sure we'll have any room to see any balls there, but we can a little bit. Looks good. I don't think I'm going to get on this side. Alright, I can see some balls. Alright. Hopefully that's good. I'm not 100% sure about that. So I'm going to let this cool down on its own for a minute. And get a test screen and see what happens. Battery's probably dead. Let's check. Let's check the battery. Battery is not dead. What a miracle. Alright, so I can touch it, so that is that is as patient as I'm willing to be. So now let's put a screen on it. Actually, I think we're done with this. Let's take a look at the, see if the other camera's even hooked up. That one? Hey! Alright, let's put a screen on it, see what happens. This has taken about 45 minutes so far. And if it works, that's probably reasonable. And if not, then total pain in the ass. Woo! Looking good so far. Apple logo. Now let's cross our fingers. And the other thing we should check is that you know, I mean, the short that causes the no power, I don't know how that happens. The times I've seen it, the report is always humid environment, or like light water damage, but nothing is corroded on the board. It just kind of flakes out. That chip doesn't like something. Hey! And it's alive! And we have touch, and I have no idea what the passcode is. Oh, that is awesome. Yay. Well, now I'm happy. That wasn't so bad, given how that came off. But I'm still not going to do it again. I'm still going to not quote this repair. Alright, so I need to look up the passcode in order to figure out anything else. Let's see if it recognizes a charger. So, iPad mini power management IC chip replacement is, you know, a pain in the ass because of underfill, but I made this video really to just show how I approach any chip that has underfill. So, recognizes the charger, shows a lightning symbol, and I think it's going to be okay. Alright, so that's it. iPad mini start to finish, uncut. I think I'm not going to edit that and make you guys suffer through that underfill removal.